Thank you very much. Excuse me, hablo solo un poquito español, so I'll continue in English. But the article that I've written is in Spanish, so please do read it. So thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss UK perspectives on sustainable drainage. As you mentioned, Polypipe are actually the UK's largest manufacturer of plastic drainage solutions, and my background is in urban water management. Now, urban is the key word here. So our cities are changing. Cities are getting bigger. New cities are appearing all the time. And this requires a change in approach to water management. So it is not simply a case of channeling water to conventional drainage systems as fast as possible, but it is about detaining and controlling the rate at which water reaches conventional drainage systems to prevent flooding events, but also to collect and reuse rainwater. So this is increasingly the way we are viewing water in the UK, and I think how it is being viewed more widely in Europe and the world. And the UK experience, we love to talk about the weather in the UK, as you may know. We have a lot of rain historically. We like to talk about the rain. But rain is primarily a problem for us, or has historically been a problem for us. So we have had notable flood events in 2007, 2014. We had some only 1 month ago. And when these flood events happen, obviously they create big news in the UK. So policymakers have woken up to the challenge that water faces in the UK, rainwater, and how can we mitigate the effect of these major flood events. Now, I think increasingly what we're seeing with climate change as well is not just large amounts of water in a short period of time, which is a problem, but also longer dry spells. So our climate is changing, and it requires us to respond, and we need to repair our own relationship with water in the UK. Now, alongside these sustainable drainage systems which address water management, increasingly we're looking at how they have wider benefits in terms of health and well-being, physical places for people to enjoy their time with various benefits in terms of mental health as well, in terms of reduction in air pollution. So this is part of a much bigger discussion which is being had. So sustainable drainage systems actually are at the very center of that in the UK. Now, if we have a look at just what I'm talking about, if we contrast an urban landscape as we know it with a natural landscape, this is what we see. So an urban landscape, when it rains, approximately up to 95% of rainwater lands on impermeable surfaces and runs straight to conventional drains. Now, this is not necessarily a problem if it's just small rain, but as we're seeing with climate change, more and more rain with drainage systems which simply cannot cope with the amount of water. So we're having flooding events. What we're also talking about more and more is poor quality water. So pollution, microparticles of rubber from tires, and various other problems which require dealing with. And then wider problems as well in terms of urban heat island, so excessive temperatures in urban environments. So how do natural environments kind of cool themselves? Well, it's by evaporation and evapotranspiration. So how do we incorporate green spaces into our cities? Well, there is no green without blue, so we need water to irrigate. If we contrast again with a natural environment, here the rainwater, approximately 95% will either infiltrate into the ground, or will evaporate, or will be used by plants and evapotranspirate. So this is primarily how the environment works more naturally. So increasingly nature-based solutions and blue-green infrastructure is something that we are looking at in the UK and also in the Netherlands, Germany, primarily many Northern European countries. So we know the benefits of green spaces. We know that they add a lot of value. How can we integrate that benefit into the urban environment? Now, in the UK, the development of sustainable drainage systems has primarily been driven by legislation, of course. For example, now in the UK, any development over 10 dwellings must have a demonstrable sustainable drainage plan. So the drainage water cannot simply be channeled to the conventional combined sewer system. It must be addressed on site. So this is normally expressed as an allowable runoff rate for rainwater, which must be achieved by the designer. So this is stipulated at planning stage, and the designer has to deliver it. Now, how the designer does that, they have a number of options, which I can't talk about now, but I can talk about maybe one or two. And what we're seeing as well, I mentioned it's an urban challenge primarily. Cities are responding. So London has the London Plan, which has a big focus on sustainable drainage systems, requiring green roofs, requiring blue-green roofs, which harvest and collect rainwater and control the rate at which it runs off. So cities are responding. It's not just national level, it's an urban challenge, so cities are responding. And we have other organizations, NGOs such as Syria, who are responsible for driving up standards in the UK construction industry. Now, they produced a number of years ago their 4 pillars of good, sustainable drainage design, and these have been very influential in the design of SUDS in the UK. They also produced the SUDS manual, which has most recently been updated in 2015, which is a very comprehensive guide to designers, engineers, planners, as to how they can create good quality SUDS. Now, one particular way in which you can address these challenges, and where we, Polypipe, have demonstrated our involvement, is with these kind of sustainable drainage systems in a very shallow way. So if you imagine a typical landscaped area like this, which historically there would have been a granular stone subbase underneath, why not replace that subbase with an engineered solution which actually is designed to capture rainwater and prevent these kind of flood events from taking place. So this is exactly what's being shown in this kind of cutaway illustration. You can see here a geocellular unit full of rainwater. So water comes from the drains and is stored underneath the surface. So you wouldn't know it was there, but it is still functioning. There are wider benefits with this kind of approach as well. We've developed systems which allow passive irrigation to take place. So the water that is stored, it is not simply temporarily stored to avoid inundating the sewer system, but it allows irrigation of the spaces above passively through capillary action. So it reduces the requirement for the use of potable water for watering plants. So it's restoring the circularity of the water. Now, there's been some very notable projects in the UK. This is just one I've mentioned. This is Counters Creek in West London. Now, they had particular problems here with flooding. And working with Polypipe, the local borough replaced a lot of the impermeable surfaces, which are a problem, with permeable surfaces to allow water to infiltrate through. And the subbase was replaced with geocellular storage units to attenuate that rainwater. Other additional benefits here included improving the quality of that water through filtration and separation, and a biofilter which removed chemical contaminants and petrochemicals, so improving the quality of water that was then sent to the sewer system. There was also rain gardens created, so amenity areas for people to enjoy. So on the outside, it just looks like a perfectly nice garden, but underneath, there is a quite simple but important method of collecting and controlling the rate at which rainwater leaves. And here is some kind of installation photographs of what is going on. Now, the good thing about the subbase replacement system is obviously it is strong enough to withstand traffic loads. So you wouldn't know these systems are there, but they are operating effectively with design lives of upwards of 50 years. So there should be no requirement to replace any of these solutions. And just finally, these kind of concepts and this kind of methodology is not just happening at ground level, it's happening on concrete podiums. So if you have wide grey spaces, concrete areas. Increasingly, we're seeing in the UK and Europe grey to green projects where concrete is replaced with green spaces. And to enhance and to make more effective these green spaces, sustainable drainage systems such as our Permavoid system are being installed. And finally, on rooftop areas, I mentioned about blue-green roofs. Green roofs we may be familiar with to an extent. We think they look very nice, they had some value. Blue roofs take this a little bit further. So instead of draining water off the roof as fast as possible, you store that rainwater for a period of time. It could be for 24 hours, 48 hours, or for longer, depending on how you design it. So why not use the roof spaces that exist, which are not being used for any other purpose, to temporarily store rainwater and reuse it through passive irrigation and capillary action to irrigate the plants above. So that is a short overview of what is going on in the UK and how our systems are contributing. So thank you very much for this opportunity to talk.